Mindy is here to share her story with us. She is an alumna of the University of Oklahoma, the co-founder and chief executive officer of Boyer and Corporon Wealth Management in Overland Park, an active supporter of various charities and foundations within our local community, a wife and mother. While enjoying an accomplished career in raising two boys with husband Lynn, tragedy fell upon her family in April of 2014. Mindy's loved ones were victims of a terrible hate crime that received both local and national media attention. From that very day, Mindy chose to confront the situation head-on, and her remarkable way of handling the turmoil helped propel her message that faith and love can overcome evil and hate. Mindy has continued to find ways to turn her grief into action, and has done so successfully by establishing the Faith Always Wins Foundation, sharing the 7 Days Make a Ripple, Change the World annual event, and by sharing her story through motivational speaking engagements. Please help me welcome to our podium, Mindy Corporon.
Okay, I like to walk around a little bit. So thank you, welcome this afternoon. I have 20 minutes, so I'm going to speak quickly, but I will try to be also very concise. When you lose a parent, you lose your history, or part of your history. And when you lose a child, you lose part of your future. And in 2014, on April 13th, I lost both in the same day, at the same time. And today, the good news is that my living son, who is now 15, got a 93% on his biology exam. That was a lot of hard work, I can tell you. So I have two boys. I have a son named Reat, who was 14, and he was murdered at the age of 14, and he is now in heaven. And then I have a son who's living, his name is Lucas, and he turned 15 in March, and that was a big milestone for us. And for Lucas, it came quietly, but we discussed it. He was then older. He made it to 15 when Reat did not. So it's definitely a milestone for our family. On April 12th of 2014, we were living life. We were at my house with my mom and my dad, my husband and I, and our two boys. And we were talking about the summer plans. And you might think, why were you talking about the summer plans in April? But if you've got children or grandchildren, you know you've got to start thinking about camps and where they're going to go and who's going to take care of them depending on their age, if they drive or not. So we were talking about summer plans around the dinner table. And my son Reat at the time had already had 2 auditions. He had auditioned for Starlight Stars Theater, and he had made it into Starlight Stars. It's a group of 24 youth from around Kansas City, and they get the opportunity to dance and sing and perform all over Kansas City for 12 months. And Reat was a performer, so that was right in his bag of tricks. And he had also tried out for Theater in the Park, and he had made it in a Theater in the Park. He was going to be in the Tom Sawyer play that summer. And so the next day, on April 13th, he had his 3rd audition, and that was it. He was just had 3 auditions that he was trying to rack up. He was building his portfolio, if you will, and it was at the Jewish Community Campus, and it was for Kansas City Superstars. So Kansas City Superstars is a singing competition. There's a little bit of dance and a little bit of entertainment, but it's mostly about singing and your presentation to the audience. It's like an American Idol. They have a tryout. The judges narrow it down to about 20, and then those 20 get narrowed down to 10 by audience. And then the 10, it's a big production in August with the final 10. And then that person who wins is named Kansas City Superstar, and they get a $10,000 award, scholarship, etc. And so we were talking about Kansas City Superstar. It was the next day. And I was struggling because I couldn't take Reat to that program, and I took him to everything. I normally took him to everything, but I couldn't take him to the audition because Lucas had a lacrosse game. And I'd already missed 2 lacrosse games in the last week. So I had mom's guilt. And mom's guilt was I needed now to take Lucas to his lacrosse game or be at his lacrosse game. And Reat said that was okay. He said my mom, his yay, could take him to the audition. But my mom quickly said, Reat, I can't take you to the audition because I'm taking Andrew and Katie for Easter Bunny pictures. Because April 13th of 2014 was also Palm Sunday. And if you're my mom and you're yay, you take your little grandkids to go to Easter Bunny pictures. And that's just part of her every year occurrence. And so she was taking them for Easter Bunny pictures. So the job to take Reat to the audition fell on my dad on April 12th. So he knew that he was taking him. It wasn't highly unusual. My dad did a lot of things with the grandkids. He was always at events, etc. But it was a little unusual that such a big audition, such a big moment that I couldn't and my mom couldn't, and now my dad was taking him. And the last thing that my mom said to my dad on April 13th was, you have the most important job today. And looking back, she realizes she's very glad she said that, because we look at it as if my dad took Reat to heaven with him. I grew up in Marlow, Oklahoma, a town of 5,000 people, and mostly they were all white. So I tend to start my talk by saying, I'm a white girl from a white town. And the religions in town were Methodist, Presbyterian, Catholic, and Baptist. There were no mosques, there were no synagogues, there were no temples. My parents offered us diversity, and we went to theater, we went to other towns, and I met people from other cultures, but my community didn't offer that. And I had a great community, and I thought a great upbringing. I went to the University of Oklahoma, and then I moved to Kansas City. And so I think it's important that you understand a little bit of where I came from, because I wasn't introduced to Judaism, and I wasn't introduced to Islam until my 20s, and then now in my 40s. So on April 13th, I drove to the lacrosse game. And I'm sorry, before I drove to the lacrosse game, Reat was in the kitchen, and I had him sing his 2 songs for me. As any parent would do, you want your children to practice. And so I said, Reat, I need you to go ahead and sing your 2 songs for me. He was dressed in his coat and his tie, and he had a fedora on, and of course he looked amazing. And he sang On the Street Where You Live. And they only sing so many bars of it, and he sang it. And I said, okay, go ahead and sing the other song, which I had not yet heard, but I knew he had another song. And the other song that Reat had prepared is called You're Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone. And he sang that song to me while I stood in my kitchen. And I listened with tears in my eyes, as any parent would, listening to your child who had a great voice sing. My dad got there, he and I chatted quickly. I gave my dad a hug, I said thank you. They both were shooing me out the door, because frankly, I wanted to go to the audition, but I needed to go to the lacrosse game. And Reat was now sitting at the computer, and I kissed him on the cheek, and I said, I love you, good luck. And he said, I love you too, Mom. And those were the last words that I heard him speak. So I drove to the lacrosse game, and it was a day like today. It was beautiful and crisp outside, and the sun was out, and I got to the lacrosse game, but somewhere in the 5-mile radius of that high school on Johnson Drive, there was lightning in the area. And before I even walked into the stadium, a mom walked out to me and said the lacrosse game has been canceled. And I did a secret jump for joy, and I felt badly for Lucas and Lynn that they had driven there. But I got in my car and I said, I'm going to the audition. And I drove directly to the audition. Now, Reat was supposed to audition at 1:30. And as I pulled into the Jewish community campus, it was 1:08. And I know that because I looked at the clock because I wanted to know, was I early? Was I on time? And I even thought to myself, I might be here before them. His audition isn't until 1:30. So I pulled around the corner of the community campus, and I was pulling to the back to the White Theater. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but pulled down the back parking lot. Nothing unusual as soon as I pull in. But as I get a little closer, I see my dad's truck. And my dad's truck is red, and I'm not a truck person. I don't even remember what kind of truck he drove, but when I see it, I know that still now, I'm like, oh, that's the truck my dad drove. Both car doors, the passenger door and the driver's side door, are open on the driver's side. And I thought, that's a little odd. I don't see any people standing. Now I'm getting closer, and as I get close enough, now I see my dad's body lying in the parking lot next to the truck. He has fallen perpendicular to the truck. There are no police, there are no sirens, there's no ambulance. I just see my dad's body lying next to the truck. He's making no attempt to move. So now I'm panicked, I'm starting to panic, normal human action. I barely pull in to a parking space, and I grab my keys. I remember to grab my keys. I remember to turn the car off, frankly. And I'm running to my father. I'm not seeing Reat anywhere, and I'm thinking to myself, Reat must be inside calling an ambulance. Oh my gosh, Reat had to see his grandfather, have a stroke or have a heart attack. And I run to my dad, and I get to about 2 to 3 feet from his body, and I am wanting to go all the way to him. But as I get close to his body, I can tell he's deceased. It's visual to me. And something stops me from reaching to touch him. Something stops me from taking one more step. And yet I'm wanting to get there, but I can't get there. And I hear the words, "Your Father's in heaven, go find Reat." And I take one last look at my dad, and the best path to take to go inside would have been around the left. It would have been to walk around where my dad's head was. Would have been to walk that way, but I didn't choose to walk that way, and I don't recall understanding why. I didn't know where Reat was, but I was thinking he was inside. Instead, I chose to walk around the truck, which was to my right. So my dad, again, his feet were very close to the truck, so the truck is now right next to me on my right-hand side. So I walk around the back end of the truck, and there are 2 men holding Reat in their arms. And I've been screaming, what happened, what happened? And I started screaming from the run from my car to my dad's body. And now that I see them, I'm screaming at them, what happened? And they look at me with a little bit of horror, and they say, who are you? And I answered with, that's my father, and he's in heaven, pointing to where my dad's body was. And this is my son. And then you could just see the color even more drain from their faces. And now I'm physically pushed and kind of tackled by a very big person. So his name is Mickey Blount, and he used to play professional baseball. And you can tell looking at me, I'm not very big, and he used to play professional baseball. So he kind of runs into me and pushes me really low. So I'm over Reat. And I want you to know, and I tell everyone, I didn't see anything horrific. I saw my beautiful, angelic 14-year-old son lying unconscious. I saw red spots on his face, which later I realized were blood. He was completely dressed in his suit, and his tie, and his shoes, and I'm thinking, I saw him only 20 minutes ago singing to me in the kitchen. How is this even possible? What happened? I keep saying, what happened? Mickey Blount says to me in my ear, there's been a shooting, and the shooter is still a live shooter. I have to get you to safety. And I listen to him, and he takes me away, and I'm probably from here, not quite to the back of the room. I'm not that far away. So I'm just they're in the parking lot close to White Theater, and I'm near the doors now. And I'm able to sit there long enough to see them sit Reat up and start wrapping his head. But I can tell that they are sitting him up. I can tell that he is unconscious. I don't have my phone because Reat had my phone in the truck. That's another story. I managed to remember my husband's phone number, and I used Mickey Blount's phone to call my husband. And I say to him, are you driving in the car? Is Lucas with you? And he says yes. And then I said, there's been a shooting, and my dad is dead. And I don't know if Reat's going to survive. I don't know the extent of his injuries. And of course he's freaking out on the phone now because Lucas is next to him in the car. So Lynn turns around on Knoll and is heading back north. I have Lynn call my mom. I say, I need you to call my mom and I need you to call my brother. And he calls my mom lets her know, and she calls my brother Tony, who's sitting in the audience today. And my mom was across the street at Town Center. So as soon as I hung up with Lynn, the first really smart thing I feel like I did that day was I told someone to cover my dad up. I said, my family's coming. I've just let them know what happened, and they're going to be here. You need to cover my dad up. And I've since read an article from the woman who did that. She managed to get him covered up. Chaos ensued. It was just chaotic. The police showed up, the ambulance showed up, the fire truck showed up, my brother Tony showed up, my mom, Lynn, and Lucas, and now it's pouring down rain. Somehow Lynn manages to drive us to Overland Park Regional Medical, which is where they took Reat. And as we walked in, it was just like it is in the movies. I don't wish it on anyone. There's a little window, there's a person sitting there. I said, I'm the mother of the young boy that was brought in. I think he had a gunshot wound. They moved us into a small room, and within about maybe 10 minutes, maybe less, a surgeon came in and he said, I'm sorry to tell you that the young man who was brought in the ambulance did not survive. We lost him, we lost his heartbeat in the ambulance. And the room erupted in screams and cries, as it should have. It felt like a building fell on top of me. I had trouble breathing. I just had not even come to that imagination. I had not come to the conclusion that he could actually have died the same day that my dad would die. I was trying to process that my dad was no longer with us. And it all came on very quickly. While I was sitting in that room with tears and yells and screams and people, wondering what happened and where's the shooter and why did this happen to us, we were a good family, we give to charity, we go to church, we take care of other people. This is one of those bad things happen to good people. Because we knew that we were good people, and I don't say that like a smart aleck. I mean, we have jobs and we give back to the community and we help others, and yet something this evil still happened to us. We had no control over that happening to us. The best thing about being at the hospital that day was that I found out Reat could be an organ donor. So I'm very happy to tell you that the tissues and ligaments and the heart valves and the pericardium that he was able to donate, they were able to procure those from him, touched at least 60 people. 60 people. And so that was a blessing. So if you ever are curious about whether you should or want to be an organ donor, please do so. Please let your family know ahead of time, because I knew that Reat wanted to be an organ donor. And the next day, I had to do the interview to make the process go through. And it was very difficult, but it was worth it. It was worth it to get something out of this, to get something immediately good. You may know that I spoke at the vigil that night, and a lot of people thought I was crazy. What was I doing? Why is she there? She doesn't know what's going on. She should be in so much grief. I was. But I was listening to my heart tell me that I needed to tell students, because I heard it was a student vigil, I needed to tell students that God did not kill my dad and son and the other person. I didn't know Terry Milano at the time. I didn't know Jim and Gion and Alyssa. I didn't know Terry's family members, but we know them really well now, and we're very good friends. But that night I spoke at the vigil because when I was 16 years old, a very good friend of mine was killed in a car accident. And it just about killed me at the age of 16. And I learned at a young age from a pastor that sometimes God's will happens, and it wasn't presented to me as well as it should have been. It wasn't presented to me the way, in a nurturing, loving way, that accidents happen, but God will be there to help you. It was presented to me that could have been God's plan. And I learned as an adult, and I learned through my faith, that God doesn't hurt people. God doesn't want us to hurt. God doesn't shoot people. God didn't hold that gun and pull the trigger and kill my family. And I went to the vigil because I wanted the students to know that. I wanted them to know they would live life again. I wanted them to know that the sun was going to come up, and as angering as that was, that we were all going to learn how to survive and to live. So that's why I went to the vigil. And then an outpouring of love came, an outpouring of love from everyone, from our community, from the Christian community, from the Jewish community, just this outpouring of love, nationally, internationally. We got cards and letters and paintings. Someone sent me a painting of Reat and Jesus. So I have a painting of Reat and Jesus in our house. And, just people just had this outpouring of love for us. But what was very significant was my concerns, my thoughts about why did someone hate Jews so much that they would just kill, that they would, one, think that they should kill anybody that's Jewish, and then two, randomly shoot people at a Jewish location hoping that they're Jewish. I mean, it's bad enough that they want to kill Jews and then just to open fire on people. And I struggled with that, obviously, and I did a lot of research on Judaism, and I delved into Judaism so much so that I thought maybe I was supposed to be Jewish. I did. It's okay. I said to Rabbi Nematov, maybe I'm supposed to be Jewish. Maybe God is telling me that I'm really supposed to be Jewish. I mean, I believe in Jesus, I believe in the resurrection, but maybe I'm supposed to be Jewish. And I was delving into all of that, and I met with Rabbi Nematov twice, and he kept saying, no, Mindy, you don't need to be Jewish. But we have a lot in common, and I started learning about our commonalities, the golden rule. Judaism and Christianity have the same rule, the same golden rule. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Be good to your neighbor. Leave the world in a better place. It also sounds like Rotary, and it also sounds like scouting. And so I'm thinking I'm supposed to be Jewish. And it's November of 2014. And I get a phone call from my pastor, Adam Hamilton. And he says, Mindy, there's a Muslim woman looking for you. And I said, I'm supposed to be Jewish. Why is a Muslim woman looking for me? And he said, you may not have heard, there was another murder. It was in a mosque in Kansas City, Missouri. It was a Somali mosque. And a 15-year-old boy was run over twice in front of his friends, in front of his brother and sister, after he had just delivered the prayers that evening. And the man who did this proclaims to be a Christian. So I said, why is she looking for me? And he said, I don't know, but I trust, her name is Minaj Shabir, and I trust her, and I appreciate her, and I've interviewed her, and she's a lovely woman. Would you please talk to her? So I called Minaj, and I will tell you that I could not say her name for 3 months. It didn't flow off my tongue like it does now, Minaj Shabir. And so we talked on the phone, and she was lovely. And she said the kids, the friends of Adam, who's murdered, would like Reat Underwood's mom to come to their vigil. Well, you're your parent, when they say you are David's dad or Sally's mom, that's who you are. I was Reat Underwood's mom. I said, of course I'll go. And my brother Tony went with me, and my mom went with me. And I was scared. I'd never been to a mosque. I didn't know what to wear. I asked, what do I wear? I Googled. What's Muslim? What's Islam? I didn't understand the difference between Muslim and Islam. They seemed interchangeable at the time. The only thing I knew was what we were hearing on the news about ISIS. And now they were asking me to come to their mosque. But I'm Reat Underwood's mom, and the kids asked for me. So I went. And my mom and my brother went with me, and we walked into the mosque. And here's what happened. We walked in, and this lovely young woman comes to me, and she says, are you Mindy Corporon? And I said, yes. And she hands me a piece of paper, and she says, do you know when you speak? What? What do you mean when I speak? I didn't even know whether to wear a scarf today. And they had me in print on their itinerary to speak at the vigil. I was third up. So I did what I had already done. I Googled more, I looked, I didn't know what to say, I had no idea. So then Minaj finds me. I still can't say her name properly. I can say Shabir. I said, Miss Shabir, do you believe in heaven? And she said, yes. I said, I can work with that. I know about heaven. I know my dad's in heaven. I know Reat's in heaven. I can talk about that. I can talk about my heart. She said, you'll be fine. And so it was my turn. I got up to speak. I was shaking in my boots. I only talked, actually I was shaking my socks because they took my shoes. So you don't wear your shoes in a mosque. So if you ever go to a mosque, wear socks. In case you get invited or you decide to go to prayers, please go, but wear socks in case you don't want to be barefoot. So that was one great tip. So I spoke, and I don't remember what I said. And for months and months, I would get asked to speak here or speak there, and I really didn't ever remember what I would say. I wasn't speaking in a lengthy time like this. I was speaking in small amounts, but I would get up and I would pray before I would go up, And then I would speak, and then I would come down, and people would say, oh, that's great. And I'd say, what did I say? And that's how the mosque was. So then after that, I did a lot of prayer time. I spent every Thursday morning at Wesley Chapel on the Church of the Resurrection campus, every Thursday morning praying, talking to my dad, talking to Reat, talking to God. What is going on? How am I going to survive this? How am I surviving? And in all of my prayers, I heard God say, bring my people together. You have the ability to bring my people together. You know what to do. Bring my people together. And that's been my mission. So we're all God's people, from sea to shining sea, from Europe to here, Japan, everywhere. We're all human. We start out as humans. And we should have respect for one another at a human level. And so we created 7 days. We created 7 days. It's 7 days of kindness. It just ended. I'm sure you saw it in the media because everyone says that media was awesome. So we just had our 3rd year of 7 days, and I'm very excited to tell you we had at least 2,000 people participate from beginning to end. Our opening day of love was a pastor, an imam, and a rabbi talking about love and what our faiths had in common. And I'm delighted to tell you that it was Pastor Scott Crossteck who was our pastor. And it was a wonderful event, and so many more people are engaging now, engaging in dialogue, engaging in understanding one another. And I tell parents when I'm recruiting their kids to come to an event or to meet a Muslim or meet a Jew or meet a Christian, I always tell them, I'm not trying to recruit them from one faith to another. I just think we need to understand one another. Why do you not eat pork? Why do you wear a scarf? Or why do you wear a burqa? Or why do you go to church on Sunday? Or what kind of prayers do you have? Do you have your own prayers, or do you all pray the same thing? What are your rules of engagement? Why do you light candles? What's a menorah? What do you think about Jesus? I went to prayers at a mosque another time when I didn't have to speak, and this woman plopped down in front of me right after the event was over, and she said, what did you think? What did you hear? I said, it was a message, it was a sermon, not unlike what Pastor Adam Hamilton would say to us, not unlike what Pastor Scott Crossteck would say to me in a Christian service. Actually, it was more forthright. It was very interesting, and then so I explained it back to her, and she was delighted that I understood it and that I followed it, and she said, you know we believe in Jesus. And I said, no, I really didn't know that you believed in Jesus. She was, well, we believe that he existed. If we didn't believe he existed, we wouldn't be Muslim. You can't be Muslim if you don't believe that Jesus was a prophet who talked to Muhammad. I said, okay. So it's just been an eye-opening experience, and I keep hearing God say to me, bring my people together. So that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing the people together and encouraging interfaith dialogue and acts of kindness. Thank you for having me today.
Any questions?
Not a good idea. Yeah, questions, any questions? My lightsaber broke, I don't recommend it. I was going for the May the 4th be with you theme. I tried, David, where's David? I tried. Yeah, really, I can take questions about anything. Grief, organ donation, the shooter, family, Lucas, my mom. A lot of people ask about my mom. My mom is doing well. She just had hand surgery, but she's doing well other than that. She had arthritis in her thumb, so Tony and Dana and I just nursed her back to health. Yes, question?
I sure enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much. Very moving. How do you come to terms with the shooter?
Yeah, so early on, people asked me, how did I forgive him? People started saying, how did you forgive him? How did you forgive him? And I am not kidding. I looked up the definition of forgiveness because I was very concerned because I never said that I forgive him. And the definition of forgiveness is to not hate. The definition of forgiveness is to know that wrong can happen, but to not carry that hate with you. And I don't carry that hate. I have it. It comes and goes. It comes in waves. I'm not telling you that it doesn't, and I get angry. I pray for the shooter. I pray that the shooter will find an ounce of the love that I've had from my family and that I have from my God, from our God. I pray that the shooter will find that love one day and understand what he did wrong. But I forgive because I will not carry that hate with me. I will not give him that pleasure.